Very good.
We on our-
Then, shall we make it official?
Yes.
All right. Live from the Al Gore Memorial Information Superhighway, it's the Plutopia News Network live stream. Our guests this time are our good friends, Suzy Shelor and Maggie Duval. And of course, coming in from the garden spot of Austin, beautiful South Austin, our good friend and co-host, John Lebkowsky. So
Hello.
now, here's Jonald.
Jonald. Hey, everybody. So the Plutopians have arrived. This is our second attempt at live streaming, and today we have the great guests with us, Maggie Duval, who is a longtime part of Plutopia, and Suzy Shelor, who has started working with us on stuff recently, and including the one of our recent podcasts. And I am going to ask you guys to sort of say what you want to talk about.
Some of the things that have been on my mind, and I rudely did not share them before we decided to go live today because I was abducted by the dog and aliens ate my homework. So anyway.
I love a surprise.
Yeah. So, some of the things on my mind, and we can, talk about it today or, in coming weeks would be great. As you all know, I have been, my daughter, I've been a freelancer for 25 years, and my daughter also had unschooling, virtual schooling, and so on and so forth. And as so many people are making this transition to a world that is second nature to me, I'm curious how people are faring. There's people who, their kids have done traditional public school, and the families are having a really hard time right now adjusting to this new structure of everybody being on top of each other and, balancing out. Do you do the same thing you always did with the structured education, or do you mix it up with family time more or whatever? So it's just some of my, that's been on my mind a lot, is just generally how people are making the transition to this hyperspatial digital world.
Well, I can say that in the neighborhood where I live, I see a lot of people out with their kids just kind of during the day. And I guess there is kind of a lot of homeschooling going on or something like that. I hear that some of the schools are going online. Our grandson has a friend who is a charter school teacher, and her classes have gone online. He's living here with us, and he is he has a couple of people that he has been visiting since we're all sheltering in place, and they're sheltering in place too. So we're trying really hard not to, and I think everybody is trying not to have exposures to too many people, since it's a person-to-person transmission that we're trying to avoid for the most part. But, we do see a lot of people out. We see kids riding their bikes. We see a lot of people taking walks. But they're kind of, keeping to themselves. When we're taking a walk and we see somebody coming down the street, one of us will move like 6 feet away, so we're avoiding getting too close to each other.
Well, the other thing.
We passed one yard this morning where the person who lived there had got some colored chalk and gone out to the sidewalk and identified all the places that dogs had been pooping on her lawn. And draw an arrow.
Right on.
So she had made all these arrows. It said, dog poop. And there was a lot of it. So her lawn appears to be like the favorite place for most dogs in the neighborhood to poop.
Oh, that's just awful. Why can't people be more responsible? It drives me crazy. I don't have a yard, so I walk my dogs around and I see people not picking that up, and I'm thinking, this is how disease gets. Hey.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, somebody else will pick it up for you. It's the American way, I guess.
Yeah, I usually pick it up on the bottom of my shoes, so I collected it for everyone.
Thank you.
It's mulch.
Oh God.
So Suzy,
Yes.
what's happening with you?
I am learning a lot about purple martins. I'm stuck in the house and they're out now, and so I've been watching a lot of them. I really haven't been doing anything but following the news, probably like most people, and wondering when we can get out of here. Fortunately, I think Texas has got it pretty easy. We're still able to go outside, like you were talking about earlier, and walk our dogs, but there are some places you can't even do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they started shelter in place in beautiful scenic Bastrop County, which is where I reside out in the country. And it's interesting in a small, our nearest metropolitan area is Elgin, population 3 or 4 if everyone's in town. I had the experience of going into the HEB there and standing in line, and it was interesting. It was all these folks were well behaved. Everyone kept their 6-foot distance and didn't make a big scene. Unlike some people in California, my daughter was saying that they've had all sorts of things in the Bay Area with people just barging in and starting a fight because they didn't want to stand in line. So hopefully we'll avoid all of that out here.
Wow. The hate just reaching new heights here. It doesn't seem like we're necessarily coming together any better. I thought we might.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of contention on Facebook, and there's kind of a weird faction. Well, I guess it's not weird. There are people that I know that are like entrepreneurial, or they're heavily involved in business. And they don't really like being shut down. And I think they feel a sense of helplessness about it, and they're sort of like trying to figure out what can they do to make this thing stop that is killing the economy. And what they've been saying is that we shouldn't really be sheltering in place. We should stop doing that as soon as possible. That it is not really necessary, that
Is that the herd mentality?
It's the Patrick
herd immunity
mentality, or lack thereof. Our cardboard cutout Caligula over in Austin, Dan Patrick, and he wants to turn Granny and Grandpa into Soylent Green.
Yes.
Or Soylent Red, White, and Blue. I don't know what's the current flavor.
Red is not a flavor. Despite what I believed when I was younger.
This actually made me think about Logan's Run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Logan's Run actually ripped off their tagline from
Jack, my video ended again.
From Jack Weinberg, old Berkeley radical in the free speech movement. He coined the phrase, "Don't trust anyone over 30."
Over 30, yeah.
Now
Well,
don't trust anyone over 60, I think.
Well, considering how many young people are getting sick, we might want to rethink this a little bit.
Thinking there's a skill that's needs to be exercised a lot more. And any of our listeners that actually stick through all of this, we're going to have to send you a basket of cookies or
complimentary fruit basket
for having good stamina.
Perhaps an after dinner mint or something, wafer thin mint.
Oops.
I've been we were horrified to read the news this morning about the spring breakers coming back from their trip from Mexico, and first going out there on a charter and then all flying back on separate flights.
Oh my God.
Just real good.
Yeah, and they're like
spread there.
Half of them are sick, and this after seeing some article a couple of days ago about data tracking, cellular data tracking, and watching like little seeds going out from one beach in Florida all through the country, and it's just my daughter and I talked a lot about there seems to be we're in the like class divide here on how people are handling this. Like, I deserve to go about my life the way I want because I'm entitled to. And yeah, it's such an obvious split, it seems. And I don't know. It just really, it's discouraging since I've been talking I have a really good friend, a former roommate of mine when I lived in New Mexico, Antonio Lopez, and he's in Rome. So I've been, sort of monitoring what's going on over there. And then I have all my friends in the Bay Area and telling me what's going on there, and friends in New York. And when you hear the horror stories, I mean, I'm just appalled at the, I don't know, like so many of us. I just like, what are we missing here? What are we missing?
Yeah, I think everybody, I mean, obviously the administration didn't expect any of this. I mean, but I wonder if he truly believed that it wasn't going to happen, or if he knew it was going to happen.
No, it's just like climate change, so many people deny it. Now we're starting to see real signs of climate change, and we're seeing some reversals that still hadn't been. It's like boiling a frog slow. So it hadn't really completely caught on yet. This thing has gone really fast. So it's been a real shock to the system, especially for those people who were COVID deniers,
Right.
But I was just going to say a similar principle to climate change denial.
Well, I found it interesting. Our dear Governor Abbott, whatever his name is, he was really incensed when Austin decided they were going to self-regulate things like the rideshare companies who just kind of dropped in, and he just insisted that the state had to cover, had to have control over these. You couldn't have individual cities and counties doing their own legislation. All of a sudden, he's just saying, well, I can't lock down the whole state. It's up to the cities and counties. It's Governor Flip-Flop, who is, what is he going to flip-flop? Maybe he'll come out pro-abortion next.
Oh, my God.
Maybe not.
Now, that's what they jumped on almost immediately. I mean, you talk about politicizing something. It's like he heard the first sound of a possibility, and he jumped all over trying to destroy women's rights. I mean, it's like he just can't help himself from denying other people rights, telling us where to go to the bathroom, telling us that abortion is not a necessary medical procedure. Well, if you're pregnant, it might be.
His lapdog and attack dog, Attorney General Paxton, seems to really love these kind of situations because anytime he can snipe at any kind of civil rights, he's the first one to file a suit, and he's incensed because there was an injunction with Judge Yackel that said that you can't just stop abortion, just because you don't like it.
Yeah. Like they didn't know that.
Well, I mean, people don't, it's like nobody wants to have an abortion, right? It's not something that, it's a painful thing. So people already avoid it, but it's also a procedure that involves somebody's body that is their body. And it should be for them to decide. And especially if there are health issues, if there's been a rape, all those other things. I don't think people go out and.
But John, it's God's
pregnant.
will. Yeah, it's God's will that you were raped, or you invited it, or that's one of my favorites.
Well, I would just point out that people like Dan Patrick, who say they're pro-life, are also out there saying that it's perfectly fine to let us old farts die off, so that the economy will be humming along. So the pro-life position to me doesn't feel very pro-life at the moment.
Well, the pro-life
they're being
also,
flexible.
capital punishment is also a big deal for the pro-rights folks, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just about controlling a woman's body, period.
Mm-hmm. Control, period. Yes.
As
Mm-hmm.
soon as that
Yeah,
thing comes out, not care.
I'm certain, young women growing up don't have in their list of things I want to be when I grow up is, I want to get to where I can have an abortion. It's like, no, it doesn't work. But I've seen things like that written on some of these conservative publications, like, all the liberal women are out there just anxious to get that first abortion. It's like, no, come on, people.
Oh my God. I don't understand. It's like that kid at Baylor who they only gave him 6 months or something. It was probation, and they didn't ask him to register with the sex registry after he'd been convicted of raping that girl. And the judge said, well, it's only his first rape. What?
Did he really say that? Wow.
3 strikes, you're out. Yeah.
It was a starter plan he was on.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, the Baylor Baptists have a poor track record for especially enforcement of anything against the athletic department.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually pretty common in any Texas educational institution. If you try to cut back on athletics, you've declared war on America and mom and apple pie.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a lot of athletic supporters, don't they?
Well, it just, that and what we were talking about earlier with the, people's response to what's going on right now. And, I deserve to do this. I deserve. It's all so tied in with this entitlement culture of, and I see people all the time going, millennials today, they're so entitled. It's like, which generation was called the me generation? It's not, it's like a class thing. It's not an age thing. It's just this sense of entitlement that, it doesn't matter what happens to the rest of you. I deserve. I see that's, at least that's what I pick up. And
well, wait, I was in the Pepsi generation. Coming at you, going strong.
Well, I was a pepper myself. Are you a pepper too? I'm a pepper. You're a pepper.
That's right.
I was Coke all the way.
Well, at one point, so was I, but I don't think the statute of limitations expired on that, so we'll just change that subject.
Those were simpler times, Scoop. Simpler times.
I was simpler.
Yes.
I long for sometimes.
One of the other, when I was talking earlier too about how people are handling, the shift to work at home. One of the things that's come up I find really interesting is, speaking of control, how so many companies are expecting that you sit down at your computer at exactly 8:00, and you work through, this amount of time, and like somehow that's going to make you just as productive. And it's a whole mindset that I was lucky enough to be treated to working in wonderful start in the out it wasn't about like hammering through and production. There was a lot of leeway, and we got a lot more done. And I was remembering them fondly because in when I was 31, I got chicken pox, and I was so sick I almost died from it. And they allowed, I was one of the first people I knew with a laptop still work when my company, my care of me. It's about the productive. When I came back, I would have, I would still, I'd have plenty to offer, to have a sense of loyalty and a sense of connection to the company. They trusted in me. And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing from a lot of friends, like they're the companies they work for don't trust their employees. It's about quotas and so I'm curious, some of your thoughts about all that.
Well, if you don't, just to chime in on that, was it Mnuchin? It was one of these guys said, it was Lindsey Graham, I think. Yeah, it was Lindsey Graham said that that this money, this huge stimulus, which we may have to pay back, I'm not real sure on that yet. He said that it would encourage people to stay at home. And it just incensed me because I thought, what are you saying about your constituents? What are you saying about the American worker? That we just want to, that we're all just lazy? Are you projecting your work ethic? What is happening here?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was a big question. If you can't trust your employees, what are you trying to say exactly?
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, they have that great stimulus package for Boeing and Wall Street and anybody else that contributes to political campaigns. But we trust them. They couldn't possibly use this to buy back their stock or get a new Ferrari for their trophy wife. I mean, whatever. So little difference in the way they perceive us and them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, what would they do with $1,200?
Buy coffee.
Yeah.
That's about what we used to spend in my IT days on, a get together with the department. That's coffee and cookies.
Okay, here's a good one. Senator Rick Scott, you remember from Florida, on Tuesday called for a congressional investigation into the World Health Organization, suggesting the U.S. should cut off its funding for helping communist China cover up the full extent of the coronavirus pandemic.
Oh,
Oh, come on. Oh, please.
the hits just keep coming.
Yeah,
that's what's known as distraction. It's like, oh, hey, look over there. They're evil. Don't look at us.
Mm-hmm.
Don't look at the stuff that we're covering up.
Where are Ivanka and Jared?
Yeah, good point.
Sheltering in place, probably in Mar-a-Lago.
Florida's going to be a hot spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they'll get what they need. DeSantis, I really think, should be in prison after that. And he's still not shutting things down. I mean, after what he did, he should be in prison. It's just how negligent.
Yeah, well, with I think about how when a certain entity declared the coronavirus a liberal hoax, the constituents of his held on to that bone and they haven't let it go, even though, at least in what I've observed, they just, okay, he said that once, and this is the one thing we're going to hold on to. And we're, and I'm thinking of the amount of blood on their hands is just, I'm like, again, my daughter and I have these great conversations and we're like, thinking about, why can't they see this? And I'm like, well, I think they lack, for whatever reason, empathy pathways. They just do not possess it. Because
I don't know. I think it's hard to generalize, though. There's some kind of weird mass hysteria going on here within that party or that group of followers. And, rationally, it's hard to understand why the emperor continues to be so naked and so many people are seeing him wearing fine clothes,
Yeah.
But the emails.
Well, yeah, but I think maybe it's cognitive dissonance. Maybe it's like when you elect a guy, regardless of how crazy and chaotic he is, you kind of have to assume that he's okay because you elected him.
It seems, and just looking back on my life in the politics, it seems to me that there's a word that differentiates what this party is now and the rest of us. And it seems to be accountability. I don't see that they are, like, for example, Al Franken. You know, the minute we heard anything about him that might have been suspect, he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
We call for our players to play fair.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, we tell them to get out.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't do that. And then they do cry, well, your team is doing the same thing. And we're like, yeah, but we took them out. You're still the same crooked team. So how, good always is supposed to triumph evil, but how does this ever work out? Because it sure looks like we're not winning this. I'm just lost as to where to go now. I mean, does this cult win? People don't want to change in midstream, right? When we have something like that going on.
Well, who knows? At this point, I don't know how to predict anything. I mean, I wouldn't have predicted we would be here. We would be in this situation. We had some potential pandemics during the Obama administration. We had Ebola and H1N1 and SARS, I guess. And they didn't seem to take off like this, but is that because of the characteristic of those particular diseases, or is it the fact that our leaders have dropped the ball here? I think it may be a little bit more that this particular virus is harder to contain than the other viruses. Yeah. But we could have contained it.
Well, we could have if we still had all the scientists and clinicians in place that were around in the prior administrations, not just Obama, but the Bush administration, Clinton. They still relied upon scientists and experts that actually knew what they were doing, rather than a bunch of guys who, spent $250,000 to someone's campaign, and suddenly they're a director of something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there was also the playbook that was set up for handling pandemics, and nobody consulted that when this thing emerged. But I don't know. I hate to just kind of complain. I'm trying to figure out how to be constructive about this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's not a lot I can do as an old guy living in the suburbs. But there are people who can do something about it, and some of them are taking action. But it is not from the very top. It's coming from, in some states it's governors. Here in Austin, we have a mayor who took action fairly early, and it's been pretty well contained here. Mm-hmm. So at the city level, there's a possibility to do some containment. What happens in a city doesn't necessarily depend on what's happening at the state level or the federal level.
Yeah, the city level seems to be where I'm seeing all the encouraging signs of people being really serious, not just trying to, pay lip service to, isolating, the people, and then, actually making them do it, and making, people, follow the rules. And the federal government is just kind of, hoping it all goes away before they have to do anything.
And I do know some futurists who are associated with the Institute for the Future who think that the cities are where it's at now, and that the best governance and the most effective governance is going to come at the level of cities. And it could be that this whole idea of having a huge federated set of states is not sustainable, and that the United States will start to, I guess, balkanize, and that we'll have regions and we'll have states and we'll have cities, and the power will be held more locally than it has been.
I
that
don't see how it could be any other way.
Yeah, if that happens, Texas will be the new Albania.
It costs to get to California. Does anybody? I jump on a train and go to California in a heartbeat if that happens. I love this state, but my God, do you think it'll go purple?
could. I mean, it looks like the demographics are there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sort of rolling thing, we get a little closer to purple with every election.
Well, yeah, and I think that it's one way that it makes me laugh how the economic miracle has backfired because it's attracted people of a more liberal outlook here to follow the job. So like, oh wait, maybe we didn't want that part of it. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, and I think that I've been noticing. I like to observe patterns, and I've been noticing how much, maybe it's because I'm connected in with the burn community, and that's been sort of the way things are for a long time, 20, 30 years or whatever, 30 more, I don't know. I can't count. But what I've been seeing is groups of friends mobilizing to help each other out, right? And it's like it's like with it's a natural networking. There's not this hierarchical power structure. It's like people are coming together and helping each other out on this one thing, and then kind of splitting up and connecting in over here to work on this thing. And I'm seeing a ton of that. And that's what, helps me think maybe there's hope for us, because that's going on. Meanwhile, is, this overarching federal behemoth is reaching entropy. And it's making me think of, I studied Russian history and the Russian Revolution, and, the bureaucracy in Russia before the revolution was abysmal. It was ridiculous. I mean, there's a lot of Russian novelists that wrote about it, like Nikolai Gogol is one of my favorites, but it's outserved its usefulness in so many ways. And there's no connection to the people on the ground. There's, cities are their own characters. Regions are their own characters. How could the federal government possibly address the needs of communities? Communities should be addressing the needs of communities. And I don't know what a new system looks like, who does, but I don't see how we can go back. A lot of people have been saying that. I feel like when you get one of those memory foam mattresses and you take it out of its container and it expands, there's no way you can put it back in again. After this, it's going to be a really interesting years.
Yeah, you can't put the genie back into the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you think it's going to be like after? I mean, presumably at some point the spread of disease will stop. Things will settle down a bit. Eventually we'll have a vaccine. But we're never going to be like we were before, right? What can we expect?
I think we just showed the world how unprepared we are for a biological attack. So,
oops.
Yeah. I mean, how difficult could it be? Look at what's happened. Nobody even did this on purpose. So something's got to change massively, drastically. And I don't know about the military. We need to maybe focus more of that money on the National Guard here at home, and what we're doing here, instead of a new $3 billion plane that doesn't fly.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone remember seeing I think it was a Peter Sellers movie, The Mouse That Roared, about an incompetent country that is subjugated by a small band of crazy people.
Yeah.
And I could easily see that happening, given some of the leadership or the lack thereof.
Yeah, my recollection is that they declared war on the U.S. because they their experience was that countries that went to war with the U.S. ultimately ended up getting a lot of aid and assistance from the U.S.?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I understand that Russia and China have moved into Europe pretty healthily, and are quote unquote helping them. But I have some friends in France who are a little bit nervous about the presence there of the Russian military.
Yeah, that's happening in a lot of parts of the world. The old, limits that were drawn, during the Cold War and afterward have essentially broken down, and Russia's moving in a lot of different directions.
Uh-huh.
They're in Syria. They're financing or arming a lot of the Mideast. It doesn't matter who it is, as long as you buy good old Russian weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And the United States is, of course, guilty of the same thing.
Well, the Russians are embedded pretty well here too.
Yeah, big time. And yeah, I mean, Putin was KGB, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, he's from the old Soviet, mindset. And, I don't, just because like the Berlin Wall fell down and, Soviet socialist republics broke apart, I don't feel like it ever really went away. And I think they've been carefully plotting and biding their time. Like, okay, you think you won the Cold War? We're gonna show you that you didn't. That's what it feels like to me. I feel like with the influence of the Russians, it's super apparent. Like, hello, obviously, they're controlling things. At least in my mind, and just having studied the Russian mindset, and it's like. You just see Putin smirk. It's like, God, this was too easy. I want
to point out that as we've been talking here, my friend George Mokray has been making some posts on Facebook. And the latest one, I think, talks about action around mutual aid networks, autonomous groups mobilizing mutual aid initiatives. And there's a link in there that is to itsgoingdown.org.
Oh, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So autonomous groups are mobilizing mutual aid initiatives to combat the coronavirus. Go. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I could probably share this thing.
Hey, has anyone heard about the coronavirus and the kids at the border?
No,
it's
I haven't heard anything about it.
Frighteningly quiet.
Yeah, there's been a lot of reports of especially the Remain in Mexico camps are apparently getting really devastated because there's no place for them to go. Mm-hmm. And the detention centers on this side of the border, it's hard to get any information out of there. So I don't see that as being a very safe place for anyone, adults, kids, anyone. Mm-hmm. Even the border patrol people that are running them, they're I doubt if they're being given proper protective gear.
Mm-hmm. And how about prisons too?
Yes, I was thinking about that too. Those guards back in with stuff, it's just going to tear through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the minute they started releasing, nonviolent offenders from jails and prisons, and of course the usual law and order folks were saying, "Well, you can't do that. That's going against what we want to do with these people. Lock up all those jaywalkers and traffic criminals."
Yeah, jaywalkers, and people with J's.
Them, always,
exactly.
Particularly them.
Well, it's interesting, John, this the It's Going Down that you shared. One of the items here, we're urgently collecting immune support herbs for respiratory health and over-the-counter cough, cold, and flu meds. That's one of the things I've been monitoring and noticing is herbalists, traditional herbalists that are friends of mine are, they're overwhelmed right now, and it's great. People are getting these and the idea of gathering them and distributing them to the people that need them the most is pretty exciting. I'm just after we finish this, I was going to participate in a Zoom on indigenous medicine.
Cool.
That looked really fascinating. Just came across my radar. The folks, a lot of these folks that I know that have been herbalists for years have been, talking about this for a really long time. What would we do? How would we mobilize if this kind of thing happened? So it's pretty fascinating.
How long do you think it'll be before Dr. Fauci gets on the wrong side of President Agent Orange?
I think he's already there, but it's just the other adults, if there are any, in the room, are restraining him. I think they may have put electrodes in him or something just to calm him down. That's the only thing I can figure, because he suddenly got relatively more sane. I mean, it's
Well, it affects his neighborhood right now, where he grew up. I mean, I've never heard that man talk so sensitively about anything. And it wasn't that sensitive, but hey, this was my neighborhood. This is going down I know these people. I know this place. And okay, well, we've all been in that situation for the past 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
The other element in the room is he had to close Mar-a-Lago and all of his resorts. The cash cow is suffering.
Oh, that's why he's interested now. So
let's fix it now, because I can't get any money in him.
And Boris Johnson got it, so that strikes close to home, I would think.
Yeah,
karma is something.
Yeah.
Ray Benson has it.
I saw that this morning.
Who?
Ray Benson?
Asleep at the wheel.
I saw that. And John Prine.
John Prine, yeah.
Yeah. Apparently John was a little better. I saw something from his wife yesterday that he had stabilized somewhat. So one can hope, because that's a person, that's the kind of people we don't need to be losing. We've been losing too many artists and musicians.
Not enough legislators.
The lizard people, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
The lizard people. Maybe they have an immunity.
An immunity, right?
Well, there will be, in our dystopian fund house here, there will be, they will be pulling their masks off to reveal the lizard skin underneath. Yeah. Yeah,
what is the name of that guy who is talking about the lizard people, reptilian conspiracy? David Icke.
Probably.
His name is David Icke.
That's right. Yeah.
Alex has a conspiracy of the day.
Alex is a lizard person. I'm talking about the guy who thinks there's lizard people.
But I love it that he's not being able to sell his miracle cures that he said would cure.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Coronavirus, a toothpaste. I mean, seriously, if his toothpaste was a cure, you'd see a lot of ER doctors in there just brushing these patients' teeth like crazy.
Brushing their teeth.
I haven't seen that yet. So I think Alex was blowing smoke up some part of our body.
So this guy, David Icke, believes that an interdimensional race of reptilian beings called the Archons, or Anunnaki, have hijacked the Earth, and that a genetically modified human, Archon hybrid race of shape-shifting reptilians, also known as Babylonian Brotherhood, the Illuminati,
or the Senate,
manipulate global events to keep humans in constant fear so the Archons can feed off the negative energy this creates.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's right.
I think he's right, too.
Wasn't that a description of the Republican Party? Fits it for me.
We weren't going to get political here.
Well, it's not my dad's Republican Party. That's for sure. I've said that before. And I'm, when we were talking earlier, Suzy, when you were mentioning how, like with Al Franken, we did something about that. Like, what happened? Like, we all sort of got together and got rid of Nixon. You know, like when did that go away where we saw somebody, you know, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely, I came from a Republican family. My dad was a John Birch Society, died in the Wool Republican, but he was at least sane. I mean, he saw the era of his ways, and we got along fine at family, get-togethers, because my two sisters and my brother and I were all just, a hardcore leftist, and he understood that. And we never had fights at home. He believed his way, and he let us believe our way. But you don't see a lot of that anymore. Now it's like, if you don't agree with the party line, you're evil.
Yeah, I recall just being a kid, and my parents would have friends. My mom was like a subversive leftist. She was she read everything on the CIA blacklist and all that. But she
with your dad.
Yeah, totally. But but they'd have friends over, and somebody'd be a Democrat, and it was just kind of like gentle ribbing. Basically, it's like, yeah, you're full of it, or what. It wasn't this ugly, whatever it is now. And I don't know, something changed, something happened.
It just got real mean. Just got real personal and really, really mean.
It polarized.
The name calling, the absolute lack of any kind of civility. I mean, even Pence, as much as I would hate for him to be in charge, wouldn't violate the Constitution, at least publicly.
Yeah, that's the key, publicly.
It's just so embarrassing, though. It's embarrassing that he doesn't know anything, and then he says he knows everything, and then it becomes he doesn't. And it's, this is really, in my opinion, he is a manifestation of who we have become. Whether we voted for him or not, this is who America has become, or he wouldn't be there.
Yeah, and it influences all of us, because I find myself falling victim to the same problem of, making someone out as evil just because they don't drink the same cola as me, or they don't like the same politician. And I have to really stop myself. It's like, these are generally people that I've known all my life. My high school classmates, many of, I grew up in West Texas, so it's a very conservative place. There are a lot of very conservative people, but they're still my Facebook friends. And I'll read their stuff, and I'll just smile, and I'll move. I don't go and attack them unless they do something really horrendous that I'll, might make a smart ass comment, something I occasionally do.
Well, I've spent a lot of time in the interior of this country. For instance, Hunter's great grandpa is a farmer in Iowa, and I'd go to some of these, go visit them, and we'd go to an event at the Grange and all that. And once you get to know people without the filter of the digital, so there's that anonymity, when you talk to people and it's not politics and all that, everybody has the same concerns. People want to protect their families. They want a good life for their families. They want to not be afraid and all that. And that's what makes me so sad. It's like, how could we get back to that and not this? I feel, it does feel like the archons or whatever they are, like, just playing up the fears, and everybody's your enemy and everybody's out to get you, everybody's out. I get this in business sometimes. I'll get from, not so many anymore because I'm a little choosier about some of the people I work with, but I'd get people like, their website would go down, for instance, and like, what have you done? You've done something to me. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this paranoia that you didn't answer my call at the precise time, so you must think this or you're doing that. And I'm like, wow, okay. So that seems redolent in our society right now. It's just this fear.
You remember the song, "Paranoia strikes deep, into your life it will creep." It starts when you're always afraid. You step out of line, the man come and take you away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you anyway.
That's all.
Yeah.
I think at this point in our technological lives, if we were not paranoid, we'd be a little simple.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that the Zuck is probably listening to everything we're saying, and he's also probably saying this isn't worth listening to for me because I've got 500 Russians that want to buy an election.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not concerned that my phone calls are being listened to or anything like that. I know friends who are very paranoid. And in fact, back in the 90s would take out the little strip in the money, that little metal strip, because they thought they were being tracked.
Mhm.
And I'm okay. I'm not quite there, but I'm not paranoid.
Well, it's a short journey from sane to paranoid. There's just enough evidence of strange behavior, and I think it's going to get even more strange.
Well, I should be like super paranoid. When I declared to my intelligence father that I wanted to study history in college, he just said, "Missy, like, why are you calling me Missy? I was never a Missy. Missy, there's history you'll never know about." And I'm like, wow, why is my father telling me this? And he's also famous for saying, it's really easy to control people. It's really easy to control people. I'm like, okay. And he probably knows what he's talking about given the nature of his work. So yeah.
Okay. I feel better in my paranoia now. I have to admit.
I'm glad it can make you feel better. But forewarned is forearmed or something like that. It's just sort of, I think it's dancing a line between the two. You don't let it, you're aware,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that naivete or whatever, but it's, I don't know. Yeah.
We've been talking for an hour, which is about as long as we said we were going to do this, and we are still live on Facebook, so it did.
That's
work.
Amazing. Wow.
I should mention to those of you who do happen to be watching us on Facebook that we had a couple of false starts today, and I think it was attributable to trying to use Facebook's new studio for live streaming. When we stopped using that, we were able to sustain the stream, and we are going to do this again.
An unsolicited testimonial to their development people there.
There you go.
Well, anything this beta is, that beta means it probably doesn't work consistently. And we've learned that's true.
.com in beta for 3 years.
Yeah, beta is actually means better have something else you can use because this ain't going to work.
Exactly. Well, I'd love to. I have to hop off, but I'd sure love to do this again.
Sure.
I know that I would like to explore some of the topics that Suzy shared. She'd like to share, and then I'd like to throw up a list. I'd like to throw up a list of some topics too. Just we were just dealing with a little bit of technical difficulties today, but I hope we do it again.
Yeah. And I should also mention, right now we're streaming. We were originally going to stream through the Plutopia News Network page, and we got diverted. So we're streaming through my activity stream, I guess, on Facebook right now.
And if we have good recording, I can edit and repost this stuff on our YouTube channel.
Exactly.
Might make a little more sense.
And we do want everybody to know you can find us on YouTube, and pretty much all of the podcasts we do are on YouTube as well. And our podcast is available through all the usual podcast sources, iTunes, Spotify, and all. What else? We have a Twitter account at Plutopia. And we have our Facebook page, Plutopia News Network. We've considered either opening up a Slack for the Plutopia News Network, or maybe making a Facebook group, or maybe both of those. We have a Patreon account. So if you go to our site at plutopia.io, if you want to sponsor us, you can certainly do that through Patreon. We really don't have much set up for our sponsors yet, but we're going to work on that. Scoop and I release probably almost every week. We release a new podcast at plutopia.io, or you can subscribe to the podcast through those usual channels. And we're very happy to have Maggie and Suzy hanging in with us.
And I have something in development. I still have my old 300 baud modem and my BBS software. So
right on.
We can bring back dial-up.
That's right.
Wow.
Very cool.
That was good.
I miss BBSs.
BBS, of course, you have to get analog phones if they even still exist.
Which BBS software were you using? You know?
Geez, yeah, it was one of those ones I stole from someone else. I don't remember. It sort of worked. One person at a time could connect, so that's very
that's a big
efficient.
Yeah, when I have a one of those, where were you when such and such thing happened? And when I heard that Kurt Cobain had killed himself, I was sitting on my Berkeley BBS, and I heard that way. So it was like, wow. I just dated myself. So there you go.
Well, when the Steve Jackson Games raid happened, people who are clueful about the history of the internet and net activism and the Electronic Frontier Foundation know about the Steve Jackson Games raid here in Austin. Steve had his own BBS called Illuminati, which went away when they took his computers. So he logged into SMOF BBS, SMOF, which stood for Secret Masters of Fandom. It was run by a guy named Earl Cooley, who called himself Shiva. And SMOF BBS was a place where I hung out there. Bruce Sterling was there, Lou Shiner, Mike Godwin, a bunch of people kind of from the Austin area science fiction community. And Steve logged in there right after the raid and kind of told everybody what had happened, and expressed his puzzlement because he couldn't figure out why anybody would want to raid his place. And that was how Bruce Sterling got involved, which led eventually to him writing Hacker Crackdown, and also Mike Godwin, who had just taken a job as counsel with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. That's how EFF got involved so quickly.
Wow.
So there's a lot of interesting history there.
We should do
that's
more
from BBS community. That was all kind of happening.
Yeah.
On the well, we were talking about it.
Yeah.
All these BBS scenes were kind of where people were meeting online before the internet really started mainstreaming.
We should we should do some shows just talking about the olden days. And
I'd love to do that.
That'd be
really
fun.
Wrapped up in that history stuff. One other thing is, Scoop and I are going to be talking to Stephen Levy about his book about Facebook pretty soon, like later this week. And I've been reading that book, and I'm learning a lot about Facebook, the history and evolution of Facebook. For people who use Facebook a lot and who hear bits and pieces of the story about Facebook is doing this or Zuckerberg is doing that, I think it's really worthwhile to read that book and to get the full history of it. Stephen is a fabulous author and journalist who does, he's very thorough. He interviewed tons of people who worked at Facebook and people who were connected to various things that happened around Facebook. And he's written this amazing book. I think it's like 500 and something pages long, that tells pretty much the whole history of Facebook, especially the evolution of the surveillance marketing aspect of Facebook, and also the Russian. I was just reading this morning the part where that discusses the Russians leveraging Facebook through placing ads there, and why Facebook didn't notice it when it first started happening, that sort of thing.
Wow.
And it's really an excellent book and really worth reading. And look for our podcast about it coming soon to a theater near you.
That sounds great.
Okay, well, we said we were going to leave and we didn't leave. Maybe we should leave. I kept talking partly because I saw that people were actually starting to join and listen to us.
Say hello to Jo Ray Domino. She's out there saying she's.
Yeah, hey, Jo Ray.
She's one of the
and
usual.
Tony Carr
suspects.
is there. Sam Delson.
Well, John, I could always sing a few choruses of that great song, How Could I Miss You When You Won't Go Away?
Please don't. No, go ahead.
No, I think the restraining order is still in effect. That. And I'm also required to keep my banjo under lock and key.
Not the banjo.
It's just hard to leave the party when you see that people are finally starting to show up.
Well, let's tell them when we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. Tentatively, I wonder if we could do it at the same time next week.
I think we
Would
should
you
give it a
guys be
shot.
up for
Back channel, same.
Yeah.
back station.
Let's
think
see,
I'll-
that would be Tuesday at 2 next week.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Your
Sounds good.
start is
Consistency.
off. Dance.
I'll get a hardwire for my computer and everything.
There you go.
I have one on the way, so and I'm right next to the modem.
string that might work.
Couple of cans.
Yeah, just hand crank it. So there you go.
Right on. So all of you people who are listening to this, we will be doing it again next week. That date being the 7th of April.
7th of
At
April.
2 p.m. And we will more appropriately stream to the Plutopia News Network page on Facebook. We're having some issues today, and we ended up streaming to my activity stream instead. But we
can
will
redirect
stream
that.
we will stream correctly next time.
We
We
will
will be in the
stream
right
correctly.
place at the right time. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye,
all of you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
We'll talk
Enjoy.
soon.
Off we go.
Bye. Have
Bye-bye,
a good
my
week.
bonds.
Bye.